Tonight, our main speaker is Tiffany. Please help me welcome Tiffany.
Whew. All right. Let me just set my timer here so I know what I'm doing. Hold up. Okay. Let's see. My name is Tiffany. I'm an alcoholic. Hello. I just need to take a second and pray just to give me a clear mind. All right. So yeah, my name's Tiffany. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is October 30th, 2014. And my home group is the Friday night speaker meeting in Prescott Valley. Kirk, thank you for asking me to speak. And Linda, you did a great job. Thank you. Congratulations to everybody that got, or the one guy that came up, or no, there's 3 that came up and got a chip tonight. Congrats. And I'm happy to be here. The nerves didn't start until just now, but that's okay. I'll get through it. All right, so what I was like. I started off, I think my first drink, I was 11, but I'll back it up from there. I'm from upstate New York. I came from a really dysfunctional family, and I used to go into like what was dysfunctional about my family, but what I've realized is the longer I stay sober, the more the denial starts to fall from my eyes, the more I realize like my perception then was totally off. And so a lot of the things that I came into this program thinking were going on in my family were all actually lies that I created or just my perception at the time. So I'll just say that my family was extremely dysfunctional, and we were all very spiritually sick, and nobody knew it. You know, we all had our own demons we were fighting, and everybody, we were a mess, you know. It was definitely a Brady Bunch family. My stepmom, or my parents divorced when I was young, and, you know, my mom remarried, and all of a sudden there were 7 kids, and you know, I felt totally lost. And I remember like 5 years old was when my problems, where I started to have problems. Like that was when my mom got married and there was all these other kids, and yeah, I felt like something happened and I wasn't lovable, and I felt like my family, they had forgotten me, you know, and I was the middle child, so it was easy to feel and to actually get lost in that family. And I took it all personal. I don't know. I definitely think that I was born with that spiritual sickness. That I don't know if I was born an addict or an alcoholic, but there was something wrong with me from the start because I took a lot of that stuff personal. And I remember, and through my whole story, like the feeling of being unlovable is what, I mean, fueled a lot of the stuff that I did, you know, like nobody loves me, nobody's ever going to love me, I'm not good enough. And I was curious about everything. I don't know who I saw do this, but my first attempt to do drugs, I was in kindergarten. And my story is there's a lot about alcohol, there's a lot about drugs, you know, and so I'll get to that in a minute. But my first attempt to do something that I knew wasn't right, and that's pretty much all I knew about it, was I was in kindergarten, and me and my friend crushed up Smarties on the playground, and we're snorting lines of Smarties. And you know, we thought we were cool, and we thought we were getting away with something. And then I'm moving on into this DARE program that we had. I don't know if any of you are familiar with DARE, but it was so bad because for a curious kid like me who was already spiritually sick, seeking attention, wanting to be cool, somehow I thought that stuff was going to make me cool. That thought got to me somehow. Dare just showed me everything that I wanted to do, and it showed me how to do it. It showed me what to call it. It showed me where to get it. And I remember leaving that first class where we saw that board with all the drugs, making a pact with my friend to do every single thing on there, and we were going to do heroin together with needles, and that was our goal in like first grade or second grade, or I don't know what grade Dare happened in, third or fourth, whatever. But that was my goal, and for a little kid, that's a crazy goal, and I had no idea what it was, but I definitely accomplished that goal, and I was proud of it. Like, those were the things that I was proud of, for sure. My family, like I said, they all were battling their own demons. We were all really spiritually sick. And I grew up in the bars when I was with my family. So from a young age, I'd watch them fight at home and then go to the bar, and they'd get along, and everybody was happy, and they were kissing each other, and just, there was all this love going on. But then they'd come home, and it was just fighting and craziness and chaos. And that was with all, with both sides of my family. When I'd go to my dad's and visit, it was just a lot of chaos, but at the bar, everybody got along, and everybody was happy. And I took that in, and that really resonated with me. Like, I wanted to spend my time at the bar, and I don't know, I looked up to that place. I looked up to the people there. I had fun there. I felt like the attention was on me there, just even as a little kid. And I had my first drink there that I remember. I can't tell you when my actual first drink was, but my drink that gave me that feeling that a lot of people talk about, that took my breath away, that made me fall in love with it. I was like 11 or 12, and I remember drinking a few drinks, feeling just like the center of attention at this bar, and blacking out, and being okay with all of that too. And I'm a blackout drinker, and I like it. It took me out of what I was going through. I didn't care. It wasn't scary. It didn't matter that I woke up in all these crazy, scary places. Like, it didn't matter, because for that little chunk of time, I was not living in my skin. I wasn't Tiffany. I wasn't that scared little girl who's uncomfortable and nobody loves and nobody wants. And I was okay with that. It came as a sense of relief, for sure. So, blackout drinking, all that stuff went on, and the more I drank, and the more I was able to drink, and the more I was able to sneak it, the less and less I did the things I like to do. I constantly pushed groups of friends away. As soon as I was starting to be found out, or if I felt uncomfortable around one group, I'd move to the next. And I stopped doing the sports that I like to do. I mean, everything. That's the same old story with it. I think all of us, we don't have room to do the things we love and to drink. We just don't. It doesn't mix. And eventually you stop doing the things you love to drink more. And this is a pattern. And like I said, all the drugs that started happening. And really it was a lot of, I found something I liked. It brought me relief from my crazy family. And curiosity and all that stuff. And it was still fun, it was exciting to me. The moment where it went from being exciting to doing it to die, to not wake up, to not remember, was January 20th, 2002. I was definitely well into my drug addiction, but I was drinking still, blackout drinking. And I needed to go score some drugs, and came up with this plan that involved my best friend, who I was going to go get the drugs with, and my little brother, because I needed him to get the vehicle, because my stepdad thought I was watching him, and this big crazy story that I spun just to get what I wanted. And So we stole the van, or we got the van. We came up with a lie, where we were going. And it was like 2 in the morning, and we were on the way home. And my brother was in the front seat, my best friend was driving, and I was in the back seat, and I made my brother, like right before this all went down, I made my brother switch seats with me. And this is my little brother who, in this crazy dysfunctional family, like I was his protector, you know, we all got treated differently when we got in trouble, and he was one that had it the worst. And I always took the blame for him. I always felt like I was there to rescue him. I was there. I mean, he was my little brother. He was a little younger than me, not even a year younger. And we were hit head on by a vehicle. A drunk driver actually hit us head on, going like 60-something miles an hour. We were going 50-something. And, you know, I had made him get out of the front seat, and he was ejected out the back window of the van, and he died in the road. My best friend was cut in half by the steering wheel and died instantly. And I woke up in the back of this 80s Chevy Astro minivan with no airbags, and was in a lot of pain. And then I saw smoke, and, you know, I thought the van was going to explode. So that pain left, that adrenaline hit me, and I found my best friend cut in half by the steering wheel, you know, and I lost it. And then I realized my little brother wasn't in the car. So I jumped out a window and found him in the road, and I laid next to him in the road while he died. And I'm 16 years old at the time. My brother's 15 years old. My best friend was 18, and I wanted to die. You know, I wasn't there. I should have died, and that's the way that's what I believed, that I should have died. You know, that the little brother that I was there to protect, that I had protected my whole life, I kicked him out of the seat that I lived in, and he sat in my seat, and he died. You know, and so that thinking, I carried that with me until I got sober, and that was one of the. I mean, that. I lived, from that moment on, I chose to live to die. You know, I was going to do whatever it took, to go to any lengths, put myself in any crazy situations, because I deserved to die. And I did that, and I don't know, I mean, just the grace of God is why I'm alive today, because I definitely did, I tried to make that happen more than anything. The family, I'll back it up for a minute, the family that I came from, you know, religion was really shoved down our throats, and I was brought up to believe that there was this God that was punishing and condemning, and if you cut your hair short, you're going to hell. If you wore makeup, you're going to hell. If you did anything, you were going to hell, and you were going to be punished for this and that, and you know, if you killed yourself, you would burn in eternal flames, and that type of God. And so I believed that all of that was true, and I believed that I was being punished for something, and that's, you know, that's why the car accident happened. My relationship with that God, I mean, broke, and I didn't find a relationship with a higher power for a long time. You know, it took getting here and getting into AA to find that. But from that point on, I lived to do some crazy, horrible things, and I did horrible things. I became this shell of a person, and that went on for, I mean, over 10 years. I think I was in and out. I did get sober probably less than a year after the accident. I was arrested in a drug house. They were packaging drugs and smoking. We were just doing a lot of drugs. I don't got to get into it, but it was bad, and I had to go to rehab for 2 years. I went to a long-term intensive inpatient, and then they sent me into a long-term intensive halfway house. So I had 2 years of sobriety, but and I do well in treatment. You know, I've been in many different treatments, all different kinds, detoxes and stuff throughout my whole using. But I do well, and I get out, and you know what I mean? Like, I can put on a smile, I can respect my elders or whoever's in charge, I can do all that stuff. So 2 years in this place, and I never connected, or I never healed or found a higher power. I never hadn't broken through. I wasn't desperate enough, and it was bad then, but I definitely wasn't desperate enough. So I went back out. I think I made it about 2.5 years, and I started dating. That's kind of what did it for me. Like, there was so much stuff that I hadn't worked on yet. And 2 years into treatment, making it sober, 6 months outside of there. But as soon as I got in that relationship, and I started to get distant from AA, and I started to, I remember questioning if I even had a problem anymore, and that thought came after not going to meetings for a while, just hanging out with this guy and all of his friends, and before I knew it, I was doing what they were doing. And it's crazy because they say, like, AA ruins, I don't know what that saying is, but like AA ruins your using or whatever, and it didn't do that for me. Like, I did not think about AA after I started using and drinking again. I didn't think about it at all, and it's kind of scary, actually, that the first time I thought about it and thought about the life that I could have had if I would have stuck it out was, 10 years later in Arizona, when I'm sitting in jail reading How It Works, and read that. They asked me to read, and I read that rarely had they seen a person fail, and I went to this meeting just to get out of my cell, and then it all hit me, and I couldn't stop crying. I was sobbing my eyes out because I'd realized, like, oh my gosh, if I would have stuck with it, But again, I wasn't desperate enough, and I had to go through some more stuff, for sure. Okay, so back on track. So the car accident stuff, going into treatment, I just became a person that I wouldn't even be able to recognize today, I am somebody, when I'm disconnected from my higher power, when I'm empty, when that hole in my soul is completely empty and open and nothing will fill it, and I can't fill it with anything, I am somebody who will put kids' lives in danger just to do what I need to do, to protect my drugs. I'm somebody that will wake up next to somebody who's maybe dead, I'm not sure, they're cold, and they're not breathing, and I could potentially bring them back, or I could just get all of my shit and go, and I choose to go, I'm somebody that comes into people's lives and finds a way to manipulate and use them and get them to care about me, and then I crush them, when I'm done with them. My family all locked me out of the house. I was no longer safe to be around. They didn't trust me around any of the kids, any of my cousins. I'm just, that's me, I could come up, I had a whole bunch of other examples of that person, but I know you guys can all relate to that, and I don't need to go any deeper. We just do a lot of damage, and we hurt a lot of people, and it's, for me, it was because I was hurting so bad myself, and I didn't want to look at that. So I had to be cold, and I had to protect what I was doing. And I say drugs because the one thing that happened after the accident, I was in the hospital for like 3 months, I think, and I broke most of my spine, and I had organs bleeding, my spleen had exploded, my brain was bleeding, my lungs collapsed, my nose was broke, my jaw, my shoulder, my sternum, my ankle, I was tore up, my pelvic bone was crushed, and I woke up in that hospital and was able to get up out of bed and sit up and look in a mirror like 2 months later, and didn't recognize who I was. I had a scar from top to bottom in my stomach, and same one down my back. I was a lot smaller, and I just wasn't, you could see the dead in my eyes. Like, I had no desire left. There was no soul left there waiting, hoping things got better. And they told me I could never drink again. So in my head, that was like, okay, well, they never said I couldn't do drugs again. So, and really it's kind of silly because I didn't care if I was alive. I mean, I wanted to die, so it just justified my drug use. And it justified me having something. And also, like, everybody felt bad for me, so they gave me drugs, you know, because I couldn't drink, and so I would use that. So that's where my story really turns mostly to drugs. And if I needed to come down from something, would I drink, knowing that I'm not supposed to ever drink again? Yeah, I would drink. So I used to think that I'd stopped drinking and just did drugs, so I'm not an alcoholic, I'm just a drug addict. And that was definitely a barrier to me really getting sober, especially because I have a relapse around that. Just because I'm not a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, so I drank, and then of course I'm doing drugs again. And that, you know, that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that this is it's a spiritual disease. Like, it doesn't matter if it's drugs, if it's alcohol, if it's shopping, if it's food, if it's anything. It doesn't matter. If it helps me feel something, if it makes me feel something for a little while, temporary, if it makes me feel good, if it relieves some sort of something, I'm gonna do it. And I'm very obsessive, so I will do it obsessively, and it really doesn't matter. It could not be my problem today, but it could turn out to be, you know, one of my biggest problems in the future. So I'm jumping around a little bit, but let's see. Yeah, the chaos of my drinking and drugging went on until I got to Arizona. You know, I decided that life was too much there. Everybody had too many problems with me. You know, it's all them, not me. So I picked out a map and spun it around, and my finger landed on Lake Havasu, Arizona, and I drove out here from New York to change my life. And it will not, for me, it didn't happen in Havasu at all. You're Lake Havasu, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, it doesn't happen there at all. There's this stuff called meth, which we didn't have in New York, and it fucked my world up. But it got real bad, and I was all alone. Like, in New York, I had people in my, you know, I had some people I could turn to. People knew of me or knew of family or knew of something. I had a little bit more. It wasn't support, but I had a little bit more. In Arizona, I had nobody, and people knew that. You know, I was definitely a target on many levels, and it got bad. And I hung around with crazy people, just like myself. So I came into this program with a lot of wreckage from the past, and one of them is rape. You know, rape is a huge part of my story. And I share it because I can guarantee it's a part of someone else's story in here. Whether you raped somebody or you were raped, you know, like that's what drugs and alcohol do to us. Like, we become people we're not proud of. We do things that we never would do today, and it's a big part of my story. You know, it's happened on more than one occasion, and it's definitely all around my drinking and drugging. Like, it's definitely been the factor in all of them is drinking and drugging were involved. So I came here with that stuff, with trauma from the car accident, you know, and not wanting to be alive, depressed, and all of that stuff. I got into Hillside. Let me switch to what happened. I got into Hillside, and you know, it changed my life. It really did, and it didn't at first. And I have no idea how I really got to Hillside. Things weren't. I mean, I had drugs to keep going, to keep, you know, doing stuff, but it was just a moment where I think God did for me what I can't do for myself, or this higher power did for me what I can't do for myself, and picked me out of one environment and put me in another, and all of a sudden I'm there, And, I'm wondering why I'm there, and I'm asking my treatment coordinator, like, how do you know if you want to be sober? Like, I don't know, I don't have anything. I don't want to be sober, and I don't want to be using. Like, there's nothing. I'm empty. And he just encouraged me to stay and to let the drugs get out of my system and to just listen, And that's what I did, and I participated in the groups, and we had this group on grief and loss. It was like a whole week-long deal that we were doing there. And I wrote a letter to my little brother, and just the whole process really turned out to be such a beautiful thing because it was my spiritual experience that fueled my recovery. Since the accident, I hadn't been able to picture my brother's face. I couldn't picture him at all. Like, I set out to erase everything, and what was burned into my brain was how I saw him die in the road. And I couldn't picture what he looked like, anymore before that accident. So I'm doing this grief and loss group, and I just get hit with a wave of emotions in one of these groups, and before I know it, I'm like screaming at this God that I hate, that I feel ruined my life, and I'm just letting it all go. And it was the first time that the first time I ever shared any feelings, that I ever got that stuff out of me, and I was screaming, going nuts. And from that moment on, things changed, and I felt it when I was at the Native American meeting with the sage burning and the candlelight, and the lights are all off. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this wave of something comes over me, and I see my little brother's face, and he's smiling at me, and it's the face before before the accident. It's his dimples and the space between his teeth and his big blue eyes, and it was, I had a million thoughts after another all in a second, and this is the first time I've seen my brother's face since the accident. He's smiling at me. That means he's proud of me. That means I'm doing something right. If I was getting high, I wouldn't be doing it. This wouldn't have happened if I had, drugs or alcohol in my system, and all these thoughts, one after another. And I knew right there that I was going to do this. I was going to do it for my brother. And that fueled my recovery. Like, that lit the fire under me for recovery. And I started to see things more clearly, so that gift of desperation, it hit me because I was so, the desperation and the pain and the suffering started to, I started to acknowledge it and see what it was. Instead of just being this numb, empty shell of a person who didn't know if they wanted to be sober and didn't know if they wanted to use again, like there was just nothing. All of that stuff started to fall away, and I was scared and I was desperate to stay sober and do whatever it takes, and I didn't trust myself. So I graduated from Hillside, and I did what I was told to do, not what I wanted to do, because I knew that I could not trust what I wanted to do. I wanted to go get out of Hillside and be homeless with my dog, which was definitely a gift from God and definitely one of the most important things in my life at that time. But I chose to put myself first, and I went into Stepping Stones in Prescott Valley, and then graduated from there. And I just continued to do what everybody told me to do, because I did not trust any thought I had. I mean, any decision I thought I was going to make, I had to put aside, and I had to take the advice and suggestions from other people. And I did that. I got a good sponsor, and I worked the steps, and my life started to change. The work in the steps, like admitting, I came to terms with the fact that I was an alcoholic. I had an eye-opening experience with that, and coming to believe in a power greater than myself, and then wanting to turn my life over to this God that I was so scared of, and that I really didn't like, and I didn't trust him because my whole life proved I couldn't trust him. I decided I was going to turn it over to my brother. He was my guardian angel, and I had that moment with him at that meeting, and I thought, okay, I can do that. I can turn it over to him. And that was my higher power, and it worked until I was ready to turn it over to this other beautiful, amazing higher power that I can't even call a name. I just have moments where I could explain to you what they are, like driving here tonight, seeing the clouds lit up, seeing the gray and the white and the silver in the sky and the sunbeams shining down through the clouds. Like, for me, that moment and what it made me feel, that's higher power to me. That's the God that I turn things over to. And my brother still, for sure. So I could do steps 2 and I could do steps 3. Step 4, step 5, I didn't have the fear that came with doing the 4th step and sharing that in a 5th step. I had already lived through all of that stuff, and I don't know. For me, the fear wasn't there. I'm a very I want to learn, and I like learning about myself. I'm like my favorite subject, of course. So naturally, so I was all about learning why I do what I do, why I drink, why I drug, why have I caused this harm, why have I done this, what, and I had horrible low self-esteem. So seeing my part in things really wasn't truly that hard, especially when alcohol or drugs was a major factor in all of them. Like, I could see that pattern. My sponsor, I got a good sponsor, and she pointed out a lot of things. We did step 6 and 7 with the Drop the Rock book. If you haven't heard of it or read it, it's amazing. It's such a good book. And it really taught me how to do what I can do to work on my defects while allowing, this higher power to reveal them to me. It just gave it an interesting spin on it, because the big book doesn't really go into too much depth on the 6 and 7. Steps 8 and 9, I had a beautiful, amazing experience. I was able to go home. The last person on my amends list was my dad, and this dad who was drunk my whole life, never really a part of my life, never present when he was drunk, and disowned me and all of this stuff. He was the last one on my list, and I did not want to make it to him or my stepmom. I really felt like I almost truly hated them, and but I knew I had a part in it. I knew my drugs I knew that, and doing the thorough work with my sponsor, I knew that, but the magic happened when I was actually ready and willing, and I was standing on the porch, and I knew I was going to walk in there and I was going to make an amends to him. And that willingness to do whatever it takes to stay sober, it opened my eyes. Before my dad even answered, I had this moment that I have a lot of these moments, and it's amazing, and I'm so grateful that I can recognize them as something powerful and beautiful, because it was like everything stopped, and I really truly understood my part in it, and I really truly believed that that more of that denial had washed away, and I don't even know if they ever really disowned me, because what I did was I got mad, and I left for Arizona, and I told no one where I was going, and I gave no one my phone number to get in touch with me, and years had passed, and I remember I stewed for 6 years that no one reached out to me and nobody talked to me, but I never gave anyone a way to do that. And it was one of those moments where I just realized it all and just saw how sick I really was. My dad opened the door, and it turns out he has 6 years sober. So it was I made my amends and he made his amends, and he understood what was going on, and I didn't even know. I can't believe my dad is sober today, and he's in my life, and my family's in my life, and it's amazing, It took a lot of work. Not all of them came running back to me with open arms. There's one sister I have a little over 4.5 years, and one of my sisters just now is ready. You know, she says I scared her too bad, and she's not ready to talk to me. And it's taken like 4.5 years of being patient with her and just showing her who I am without trying to force her to forgive me or whatever. Just small doses, and it's worked. You know, it's paid off. Let's see. So steps 8 and 9. I mean, there was financial amends I had to make, but now my credit, like I've put a lot of hard work into fixing those, and my credit is good. Like there's just some of those little gifts that come with just kind of taking care of your stuff and cleaning your side of the street. Step 10, 11, and 12 are those ones that, you know, we have to do them every day, and I don't do them every day, you know. I definitely don't work a program of recovery solid every single day. I don't. I start to feel good, and then I stop doing what I was doing to feel good, and then I find myself back in like chaos or, you know, issues I can't find solutions to, or seeking other things, people, places, and things to make me feel something, and I get in funks. But I appreciate them, you know, because I've learned a lot about myself and what I have to do through those. Gosh, all right. So let's see here. There's something else I wanted to say on that. I'm very easily distracted. Let's see. All right. Gosh, I totally went blank. But working those steps, that first year of recovery, I mean, I had to focus. I had to focus on nothing but recovery. You know, I had to fill my brain with nothing but recovery. I read nothing but recovery books. I went to multiple meetings a day. I feel like I have it's that story of the Native American boy is talking to the grandpa or something about the two wolves and which one wins, and the one that wins for me is the one I feed. And so that first year, I mean, I fed it nothing but recovery. And after doing that, I was able to go on to school, you know, and I was able to start adding in a few more things into my life. But I was not going to date. I was not going to have sex. I was not going to do any of those things that came as a distraction. Like, I had to put my recovery first, and it worked for me, you know. It allowed me to focus on finding a true relationship with that higher power, finding who that higher power was to me. What because it's my thing. It's my God. It's my higher power. I mean, who is He? What does that mean? Working on figuring out who I was, becoming friends with other women in the program and women in general, and learning how to have healthy relationships with guys. All of that stuff had to come first, you know. And I'm so grateful I did that, because I see from the beginning of my sobriety out here, I've seen a lot of people that I got sober with in the beginning, or that come in and they start doing good, and then they start dating, and then all of a sudden you don't see them anymore. And it's that thing, like I don't know why we do it, but you get in a relationship and you distance yourself from the people that remind you who you are and keep you sober, and that's you guys, you know. A lot of blessings. Let's see what time it is. I've had a lot of blessings in this program, and one I want to share with you is my dog meant the world to me, and this is my higher power, and I'll end with this. My dog meant the world to me. I felt and I truly believed that there was some connection between my brother and my dog. And every time I would look at him, I would get this feeling in my heart. And I went through some really, really bad stuff down in Phoenix that I tried to kill myself over. I was finally like, I don't care about the burning flames. It doesn't matter. It's not as bad as what I just went through. And but I had this dog, and I remember right before I tried to kill myself, my dog runs in the room, and he sits down and he looks at me, and I saw my brother, and I thought, I have to take care of this dog. I have to. So I continued on and eventually got sober, and like I said, I wanted to get him, but I had to put myself first. Well, I eventually got my dog back, and he not only was there for the worst part of my sobriety, reminding me of the worst part of my using, reminding me of my brother, but he was there in the beginning of my sobriety, and really showed me what unconditional love was, and really comforted me on so many different levels. I mean, dogs are amazing. He was my hiking buddy. He was everything. And I had to put him down. He got injured really bad, and I didn't want to do it, but I had to put him down. So I had a friend. I didn't want to take him to some hospital, so I had a friend take him up to the mountains and give him some elk meat and, kill him, bury him. And I went back to where he was buried, and I remember standing there thinking I made the worst decision ever, thinking that how could I do what I did, and I was just devastated over it. And I'm standing there sobbing and, really starting to feel angry towards this higher power again. All of a sudden that God came back that I grew up with, and I was starting to feel angry, and I was starting to feel bitter. And my brother, real quick, loved eagles, okay? He loved bald eagles. That was his thing. And on his gravestone, there's eagles. So back standing over my little brother, and I'm crying, and my friend was like, "Shh, do you hear that?" And, I stopped crying, and I'm listening, and he said, that's baby eagles. And I look up, and right above where my dog was buried was a tree with a baby eagle's nest in it. And for me, like, that moment right there, it brought instant peace. Like, I knew my brother, my dog. It was my higher power there reaching out to me, telling me that I've cared for you from the beginning, when even in your using. Like, this isn't just something that just happened. And it changed everything for me again, because like something out there, this power out there greater than me, cared about me and cared about those little things that were going to change my life, and were going to fuel my recovery, and were going to make me passionate and make me, who I am today. Like those moments right there, So that is my higher power to me for sure. And I'll close with this. Sorry, I'm totally all over the place today, but I like this part. It's on page 124 in the Big Book. This painful past may be of infinite value to other families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not, and when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. All right, so I'm going to pass with that. Thank you for being here tonight.